Now, folks, we have one more reading to go through. This is coming from the divine forces of the lunar nakshatras as portrayed in the Vedas. We are going to discuss the Purva Phalguni and Uttara Phalguni native. Now, this is just how this author has decided to do this, is they've squashed the readings for Purva Phalguni and Uttara Phalguni into the same reading. So I'm probably just going to reread this when we get to the section on Uttara Phalguni. But I digress. Now, keep in mind, this is coming from an author, Radhe, who is, while I deeply respect the writings that she does, and she really is incredibly deeply well researched into how the character of the nakshatras are portrayed from their Vedic lore, from the Vedic lore, from her research in all of the literature of the Vedas. This is still an author who abides by sidereal. She's a sidereal astrology practitioner. So there might be times when this particular author will blend her understanding of, for example, Purva Phalguni still being considered in the tail of Leo, or the mouth of Leo, rather, the beginning of Leo. Is that right? No, it would be the tail end of Leo, going into Virgo. So there are times when this author might convey qualities to this nakshatra that are possibly carrying some of the distortion points that we've mentioned earlier in this video. So keep it in mind when we hear about the character quality of Purva Phalguni and Uttara Phalguni, that there might be some distortion of carrying a sign that no longer is associated with them, as well the Vimshotari Lord. Oftentimes, authors will assume that there's a character of Venus in Purva Phalguni simply because Venus is the Vimshotari Lord of Purva Phalguni, just like the sun is considered to be the nakshatra, the Vimshotari Lord of Uttara Phalguni. So, how this works is, well, we already described it at the start of this video, so see the start of the video if you want to see why that's not a take. But this author probably will convey some of the Venus character in the nakshatra, so we have to be careful as modern interpreters, where we need to separate the wheat from the chaff in this author's depiction of the Purva Phalguni and Uttara Phalguni native. Okay, so let's get into it. Aryaman and Bhagha, who are ruling devatas for the Phalgunis, they have many common roles and responsibilities. They share roles and responsibilities. And thus, this is also the case for the Purva and Uttara Phalguni natives. The Phalgunis are foremost noted as the marriage nakshatras of Surya and Soma, whose wedding ceremony is no doubt the most glitzy celebration in the history of Vedic literature. Surya's fashionable, jewel-bedecked bridal gown, the Ashvini Kumaras' ornate bridal carriage, and a wedding procession comprised of the most elevated gods. All of these things indicate the festive occasions that are part and parcel of the Phalguni native's life. The native of these nakshatras, by the way, when we say native, this would typically mean someone who has the ascendant in either of the Phalgunis or the moon in either of the Phalgunis. It's particularly the moon that is most often conveyed as the soul of the nakshatra, and that the person's moon in their nakshatra is a deep, it's possibly in some ways the most deepest signet of the nature of a person's soul, the character and narrative inside of a person's ongoing soul. But the ascendant also would play a huge part in the character quality of a person with the character of a nakshatra. So a native with ascendant or moon in either of the Phalgunis, their role in celebratory occasions spans a wide range of possibilities, depending upon the Phalguni planet in the terrain of the chart. Now, the author is telling us that the native may even plan big events. This is such as someone who has Mercury or Saturn in the Phalgunis. They may be responsible for theatrical productions, such as Venus in the Phalgunis. Or they might be a musician. That's Venus or the moon in the Phalgunis. They could be a performer, such as if they have Mercury or the moon in the Phalgunis. Or they might be a master of ceremonies. That's the sun in the Phalgunis, tends to take on that character. Of course, just about any well-conditioned Phalguni planet involved in auspicious yogas and positive delight from friends, strong shadbala, etc., but particularly any well-conditioned Phalguni planet involved in auspicious yogas may implicate the native as the star attraction, doted upon by all attendees. How outrageous and pompous the festivities are also depends on the nature and condition of the planet in question. The combined stellar configuration of the Phalgunis is the marriage bed. Hence, there is an emphasis on conjugal life and its associated desires and pleasures. The native of a Phalguni enters into a happy ever after marriage with their dearly beloved, unless, of course, the chart indicates some kind of marital difficulties, which would really put a blockage to the basic narrative of the soul of someone involved with the Phalgunis, or the energy of any planet or ascendant or moon there. If such is the case, then happy ever after may instead be one after another. Such was the case with Zsa Gabor, who had the rising sign in Uttara Phalguni, who acquired a reputation for serial matrimony. In all, she was married 9 times. It's someone named Zsa Gabor. Now, the Phalguni native reaps the benefits of Aryaman's generosity. It's financial support from the in-laws or the reins of the family business. Or they might also enjoy the benefits of Bhaga's wealth. It's the recipient of a generous dowry. Now, should the 7th Bhava Bhavesha be implicated, then the native spouse becomes the likely benefactor of such privileges and luxuries. So if your 7th house dispositor, the lord who's carrying the 7th house cusp, falls into Purva Phalguni or Uttara Phalguni, then your spouse might become the one who's the benefactor of these privileges and luxuries of Aryaman or Bhaka. As we mentioned, Aryaman is all about gaining support from the in-laws in the way of helping them to do business together, a father-in-law helping out the son-in-law, or the parents-in-law helping out the daughter-in-law of the marriage as well, in the case of a woman. So if the 7th lord is in Purva Phalguni or Uttara Phalguni, it's your spouse that's going to be getting the benefits of Bhaga and Aryaman. J.P. Morgan Jr., known as Jack, is exemplary of this aspect of the Phalgunis. And this is someone who has their Venus, their Mercury, Rahu, and Sun all in Purva Phalguni. And Venus and Mercury are in Dhana and Raja yogas. Although that might not be true because since this person is a sidereal astrologer, those yogas might not be truly there for us tropical astrologers. But still, this person, Jack Morgan Jr., did have Venus, Mercury, Rahu, and Sun in Purva Phalguni. Jack was the son of the legendary financier J.P. Morgan Sr. J.P. Morgan Jr. married Jane Grew and had 4 children. When his father passed away, Jack inherited nearly $50 million and took over the helm of J.P. Morgan and Company. This is an example of someone with that going on. Now, the Phalgunis imbue a sense of grand destiny that's often tied to a personal relationship like a marriage. Just as Sati was destined from an early age to marry Shiva. As well, this could also be a grand destiny tied to a business partnership. So don't be surprised if that relationship involves an outlandish character or someone from a very different background. That's the Shiva quality in this person, in this narrative. Now, the native is also likely to be put through a battery of tests to prove his worthiness. Others in the native's life, including family members, may at first not approve of the native's choice in partners, just as Sati's father downright disowns Shiva, who's his son-in-law. So all this suggests that creating viable businesses or personal partnerships might take a few tries for the Phalguni native, perhaps even with the same person. Under the Phalgunis, Bhagha chaperones Surya to Soma's abode, where she and Soma plan on building a life and a family together. So the home becomes a place of emotional security and familial enjoyment for the person with Phalguni emphasis in the chart. Hugh Hefner had the Lagna in Uttara Phalguni, and his home was the famous Playboy Mansion. Just as an example. Now, the native is extremely adept at matchmaking. The ability to bring the right people and resources together is second nature to the Phalguni person. This talent perhaps launches the native into a career as a human resource recruiter, an investment banker, or a real estate broker. Recall that Purva Phalguni is ruled by Aryaman, the devata of contracts. So thus other vocations may include that of a contract attorney, a notary, or a contract negotiator. This is very Aryaman stuff, especially for those emphasizing Purva Phalguni. Now, unique to Uttara Phalguni is a peculiar attitude that develops towards money, especially when the nakshatra is afflicted. The deity of Uttara Phalguni, being Bhagha, is blinded in Vedic and post-Vedic literature. So this is suggestive of the proverb of blind fortune. It's one who is blind to their own good fortune. They often take it for granted or abuse this sort of good fortune. So, for example, if a Phalguni, especially an Uttara Phalguni native, they might spend lavishly on desired possessions or give indiscriminately to others. But if all else bodes well in the chart, then the Uttara Phalguni native is instead extremely philanthropic. They donate their time and money generously to worthy causes. Now, lastly, on a physical level, if Uttara Phalguni in particular is afflicted, it may give serious health issues related to the eyes and vision, because Bhagha's eyes are poked out when glancing at the sacrificial offering. For the sake of Purva Phalguni, we see that there is a, just like for both the Phalgunis, there's this emphasis on marriage, there's this emphasis on the grandiose, high living and celebration nature of making big festivities, big celebrations for events that take place, making them into a big deal, which is a cool and beautiful energy for anybody to have and to see inside of this nakshatra.